This is the Crimson Corner with Bill Riley.
Walks it into the end zone for a Utah touchdown.
Your source for the best insight on everything happening in and around Utah athletics. Now, here's the host of the Crimson Corner, the voice of the Utes, Bill Riley.
Welcome to the Crimson Corner podcast. I'm Bill Riley. Our show today brought to you by Advanced Window Products, Nate Orchard's company, the best window company in Utah. I could not be more excited. I get more and more excited with every one of these episodes every single week. But this week's edition of the Crimson Corner podcast is huge. We are going to recap quickly the Wyoming win for Utah, but look ahead to the biggest game of the Big 12 era for the University of Utah. Big Noon is here, Big 12 opener is here, and Texas Tech will be here this week, ranked number 17 in the country. We're going to talk to a guy that helped build Utah football in many ways. He was the guy that made Utah football cool. That's former Utah head coach Urban Meyer, who's going to be here this week with the Big Noon Kickoff Show. We'll talk about some of the Utes in the pros, go around campus, and do all that good stuff coming up here on this week's edition of the Crimson Corner with me, Bill Riley, the voice of the Utes. Don't forget, Saturday's kickoff is a 10 a.m. kickoff at Rice-Eccles Stadium. The Big Noon Kickoff Show will be opening up and kicking off and going on air at 8 a.m. Everybody is welcome on the corner of 5th South and Guardsman, right there in the tailgate lot, usually where I do the pregame show from the Smith's tailgate tent. If you know where that big white Smith's tent is, that's where it's going to be. It's going to be right outside of that. Rob Stone, Matt Leinart, Mark Ingram, Brady Quinn, Urban Meyer, they're all going to be there kicking off the Big 12 season with Utah and Texas Tech, and it could not be a bigger matchup and a better game. We'll get to that game coming up in just a few here on the Crimson Corner. Utah football 3-0, now ranked number 16 in the country. Nice win over the weekend, business-like win. Kind of a tale of two halves in the win over Wyoming. 31-7, if you just look at it, you say, okay, not a bad win. Utah dominated the first half but had really nothing to show for it. 265 yards, but they had a red zone turnover, 3 missed field goals. They had 3 points. They were up 3-0 at the half. Let's just say Kyle Whittingham was not pleased as he walked off the field on Saturday. After that, on the radio broadcast, he was pretty straightforward about what needed to get done. And then they came out in the second half, and they got it done. 276 yards in the second half. They had 4 possessions. They scored 4 touchdowns. They had 4 TD drives, 4 red zone appearances. They did what you needed to do on the road. Wyoming was pesky. They were not a bad team. In fact, they might be the best team Utah's played so far. We've seen kind of the dumpster fire that UCLA became, and then they fired their head coach on Sunday, Deshaun Foster. But Utah came out in the second half and took care of business. 31-7 was the final score. My 3 takeaways from that win on Saturday: Ryan Davis and Dallin Bentley are now the favorite throw game targets, I think, of Devin Dampier right now. Ryan Davis, we didn't talk a lot about Ryan. It was like, who's going to be the deep threat? Ryan Davis played with Devin Dampier a year ago at New Mexico, caught over 50 passes from him. He had 10 on Saturday. The two of those two guys combined, Dallin Bentley and Ryan Davis, were targeted 19 times and came up with 14 catches. They have become kind of the go-to targets. Others are catching balls and making plays, but those two guys in particular right now seem to be the go-to guys for Devin Dampier. We'll see if that kind of stays the same this week as they play against Texas Tech. My second takeaway is Hunter Andrews. He is a Swiss Army knife for this Utah offense. He is the ultimate offensive chess piece for what Jason Beck wants to do, because he can be a wildcat quarterback. If you watch the game or listen to the game, listen to my call with Scott Mitchell and Sly last weekend, he was basically the guy they handed the ball to on that final drive and just wildcatted it. He's 6'2". He's 215 pounds. He's a former high school running back. They could play him at wildcat quarterback. They can line him up and play him at running back. He could play the H-back, or he could play tight end. He is the most versatile weapon they have got on the offensive side of the football, and I think his role is going to continue to expand because he's really, really good. Got the late touchdown for Utah, just ran it in from 11 yards out. My final takeaway, John Henry Daly. He is a dude. He has got 5 sacks in 3 games. He had another sack. He had a strip sack against Wyoming. The price of poker goes up now because he's going to be playing better competition. And he's going to see some really good offensive linemen, but he is looking the part right now on that defensive line. Hey, there's a lot of guys doing it. Lance Holtzclaw's doing it. Cash Dillon's doing it. Paul Fitzgerald. Limited snaps for Logan Fano. But John Henry Daly has a motor that does not stop. And he looks like a dude. I know people have compared him to Hunter Demick, and I think it's not a bad comparison. Both big, athletic, white dudes who can rush the quarterback from the edge. I said this in the post-game show, and Kyle Whittingham kind of chuckled. I think John Henry Daly might be a little bit better athlete than Hunter Demick. It's weird to say that. He's also got a little bit more time to go because Hunter played, had 15 sacks one year, then got to the NFL. John Henry Daly's not there yet, but he has a little more bend, if you know what I mean. When he's coming around that edge, you can see him kind of bend, and I like what I see. So those are my 3 takeaways from the game. Utah did what it was supposed to do against an old Mountain West Conference foe. My game ball for the Wyoming game, I'm going to give it to Devin Dampier. There were a lot of guys that played well, but Devin, here's the interesting thing about Saturday's game. Utah faced a lot of adversity in that game. It was self-inflicted adversity. There were a lot of penalties. There was one drive in particular where Utah ended up paying it off with a touchdown, but they had 3 different penalties of 10 yards. They had 2 holding penalties and I think a block in the back penalty that set them backwards. They overcame every single one of those penalties, and it was Devin Dampier really doing it because – they'd make a play, get set back 10 yards. Devin wasn't flustered. He just goes about running the offense. He accounted for 316 yards of total offense, 86 on the ground. He was the leading rusher, 230 through the air. He threw 2 touchdowns. He was always in control. He made good decisions. He ran when he needed to run. He made really big throws. The touchdown pass he made to Larry Simmons. First of all, the ball got away from him. The ball got dropped, and it bounced right back to him. A lot of quarterbacks, a lot of players are just going to fall on the ball, live to play another day. He got a very fortuitous hop back to him, and then does what he does so well, got his eyes right back downfield, scrambled out to the right, and then he just uncorks an absolute laser. And credit the throw was fantastic. Larry Simmons kept the play alive, got to the sideline in the end zone, got his foot down, inbounds. It was the play of the game offensively for Utah, but that is Devin Dampier in a nutshell. At least so far through 3 games in this offense, you can see how comfortable he looks. He's always in control. He makes really good decisions, and Utah paid it off with touchdowns, including that play to Larry Simmons. So my game ball for the Wyoming game is going to go to Devin Dampier. They are going to need a performance like that and maybe a little bit more so against Texas Tech out of Devin Dampier. We'll get to that coming up. Tech is ranked 17th. They are 3-0 on the year. Their offense is prolific. Now, to be very fair, I think this is the game we're going to find out a lot about both Utah and Texas Tech. Both have done exactly what you need to do. They have beaten lesser opponents and drilled them big time. Utah's averaging... What are they averaging? 45 points a game. Tech's averaging 58 a game. Tech is averaging 603 yards of total offense a game and 388 yards of passing. They bring that to Salt Lake City for the first time ever this weekend. It's going to be an interesting game. As I mentioned at the top, Big Noon Kickoff is here. Get out to the show. It's free. It's open to the public. They're going to go on the air around 7. It's going to be right there on the corner of 5th South and Guardsman, so get out there and watch the show. Take it all in. But here's who they've beaten this year. Texas Tech has beaten Arkansas Pine Bluff, Kent State, and Oregon State. Not exactly a murderer's row right there, but, Utah's beaten UCLA, who's turned out to be not very good. They've beaten Cal Poly, and then they beat Wyoming. So these 2 teams are really kind of in the same place. They've beaten lesser opponents, and they've beaten them rather handily. The man that is the trigger man for that Texas Tech offense is Baron Morton. He has thrown for 923 yards, 11 touchdowns, and 1 interception in 3 games. He is a Patrick Mahomes protege. Mahomes works out with him in the offseason. They're both Texas Tech guys. He is a very good passing quarterback who can also run with the football when he has to. Doesn't do it the same way that Devin Dampier does, but he's a guy that can use his legs if he needs to. His favorite target so far is a guy named Coy Aiken. He's caught 12 passes for 245 yards, 3 touchdowns, averaging over 20 yards a catch. They have three guys, though, who can really go after it and get it. They had three guys over 100 yards last week against Oregon State. But Aiken is really his favorite go-to guy as of right now. So that's a little bit about them. They have spent big time, too. We're making no secret of this. We're not breaking any news here. Texas Tech, depending on the number you look at, they spent anywhere from $25 to $55 million on their roster this year. Now, that will change, obviously, next year. They front-loaded a lot of those contracts. People have said, well, why? They did it before the July 1 date came down where you had to stay in that $20.5 million range. They spent heavily on their defensive line. They really wanted to they really wanted to upgrade their defense, but in specific their defensive line. They added a pass rusher from Stanford named David Bailey. They added a pass rusher from Georgia Tech named Romello Height. They added a couple of defensive tackles, one from UCF named Lee Hunter, and one from Northern Illinois named Skylar Gill Howard. Their front four is very good. Is it the best Utah's ever seen? I don't think that's necessarily the case, but it's a very good front four. One of the matchups everybody's going to be pointing at is that defensive line of Texas Tech against Utah's offensive line. And to be fair, Utah invested heavily in its offensive line. So that's going to be a matchup to keep an eye on coming up on Saturday. I'll get to the matchup I'm watching coming up in just a bit. Who's the head coach of Texas Tech? It's a guy named Joey Maguire. He was a high school coaching legend in Texas. He won 3 state titles at Cedar Hill High School outside of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Very good coach. He's in his 4th season now at Texas Tech. He actually took over from Matt Wells. You guys remember Matt Wells? He was a coach at Utah State, parlayed that into the Texas Tech job, and then got let go after a couple of seasons at Texas Tech. Anyway, he's a high school coaching legend. He coached 3 years at Baylor before he went to Texas Tech. I got a chance to meet Joey Maguire when I was at Big 12 Media Day and had a chance to interview him for Utah Athletics. Some of you may have seen the interview online. Maguire was great. He had so many great things to say about Kyle Whittingham in Utah. Nothing but respect for the program. He told me this, and we'll play it for you coming up here. He's really looking forward to coming to Rice-Eccles Stadium because he's heard nothing but great things about Utah football and the atmosphere at Rice-Eccles Stadium. Here's Joey Maguire.
Yeah, I think it's going to be one of the best games played in the nation in any conference. You have 2 extremely talented teams, and it's going to be really interesting because you're going to have a lot of strength versus strength. Utah has 2 of the best tackles in the country. I mean, they have a chance to both go in the first round. We feel like we have 2 of the best defensive ends in the country. They both have a chance to go in the first round. So, you're going to have matchups like that. I've never played there, but all I hear is what a great college environment it is to play in Utah. And I can't wait for that because that's what it's all about. Whenever you're talking about the pageantry of college football and being able to go into a place that has great tradition, that's going to be a lot of fun. I know it's going to be really tough. We've got a lot of work to do before then, and I know they're not going to get ahead of schedule, but it is the first Big 12 opener, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
So that's the head coach at Texas Tech. He is a firebrand. He is a football guy through and through, and he's bringing a good team in. Couple of ties that are interesting, by the way, in this football game. Texas Tech star linebacker Jacob Rodriguez. All-conference caliber linebacker for Texas Tech. He played and was coached by Jason Beck when Jason Beck, our offensive coordinator at Utah, was at Virginia. You want to know why that is? Jason Beck didn't coach linebackers. Jacob Rodriguez was a quarterback. Yeah, he was a quarterback at Virginia and then opted to transfer from Virginia, and they moved him to linebacker at Texas Tech. So Jason Beck coached Jacob Rodriguez at Virginia, and Clay Maguire, Texas Tech's offensive line coached with Mark Ottawaya, Utah's running backs coach, up at Wazoo. So there's a couple of little ties that bind these 2 programs. I think it's going to be a great game. I mentioned a lot of people are looking at the trenches, and that's great. I think it's going to be a fun matchup with their defensive ends matching up with Utah's defensive ends. But let me tell you, as fun as that's going to be, To me, I think where the game is going to be decided is Utah's secondary and how Utah's secondary matches up with the throw game and the wide receivers of Texas Tech. Utah has not played anybody, and I mean anybody, this year that will throw the ball the way Texas Tech throws the ball. Now, they're going to run it a little bit, too. This isn't the old Mike Leach air raid where Mike ran the ball like 3 times a game and then threw it 67 times a game. They'll throw it quite a bit. They will run it, too. But for me, let's see how Utah's secondary holds up against that throw game. Baron Morton is outstanding, and he's got 3 really good wide receivers highlighted by Coy Aiken, who I had mentioned earlier. So for me, that's where the game gets decided. If Utah does a good job, and don't think you're going to hold Texas Tech down, shut a team like that out, things like that. They're too good offensively. But can you slow them down? Can you prevent the big plays? Can you make them earn it down the field? Can you get them off the field on 3rd down where you need to? So I'm going to be very interested to see how the Utah secondary holds up this week against the Texas Tech throw game. All right. That's my quick thought on Texas Tech. Big noon kickoff, the recap of the Wyoming game. I'm really excited about our next interview. I try to get you guys good, insightful interviews every week on this show. Well, our next guest coming up on the program is going to be here this weekend. And I've always said this. Ron McBride built the foundation of Utah football. Kyle Whittingham is the greatest coach and the most important figure in Utah football history. But our next guest is a guy that really took it and ran, made Utah a little bit of a national name, and made Utah football cool. He was only here 2 years, but what he did in those 2 years was so very important to the building of this program and where it is today. Urban Meyer, part of the Big Noon Kickoff Show, is coming back and attending his first Utah football game since, well, the Fiesta Bowl, but really his first game at Rice-Eccles since the first time game day was here and the time they beat BYU in 2004. That was the final time he was at Rice-Eccles for a game. He's been back certain times over the years, but never for a football game. So coming up next on the Crimson Corner, we're going to catch up with former Utah head coach Urban Meyer.
Here's another insider interview on the Crimson Corner podcast.
Crimson Corner podcast continues. Big week this week. Big noon kickoff coming to town. A couple of nationally ranked teams squaring off, as we talked about in the first segment. And now it's kind of walking down memory lane for me a little bit. The beginning of my Utah career coincided with the end of his Utah career. My first year on the job was his last year on the job. And so it's kind of a full circle moment here for us. Utah fans, you know him, you love him. He's part of the Big Noon Kickoff Show, of course, soon to be Hall of Famer. Urban Meyer joining us here on the Crimson Corner with Bill Riley. How are you?
Bill, good to see you, brother.
It's great to see you too, Urban. How excited are you to come back to Salt Lake this weekend?
You know, I've been with Big Noon for a while, and I would put every production meeting, I'm like, damn, listen, guys, we have to get there. We have to get there. We have to get there. And obviously Utah's had such a great run. I'm surprised we haven't. But they're facing a really good team in Texas Tech. But I mean, I don't care who they're playing, to be honest with you. I just can't wait to get back there. I've been back a couple of times but never do a game. Been to some practices and a couple of banquets. And Kyle was good enough to have me talk to, I think, his clinic, his staff, and stuff like that. But and then he beats me in tennis, and we call it a wrap. But I can't wait to be back.
Well, we're excited to have you back. The fans are going to be crazy to see you on Saturday, and the rest of the crew too. Let's go back in time for just a minute. 2002. You're working at Bowling Green. You're having great success there. Your star's on the rise just a little bit. What appealed to you about the Utah job?
What a great question. You know, we lived in Fort Collins, Colorado for 6 years, and Shelley we loved the West. And I started getting a bunch of job offers my second year at Bowling Green. And Shelley, you know, I won't tell you the other names of the other schools because it doesn't matter, but she said, you know, Utah is such a beautiful place. And then I started thinking about, you know, Ron McBride. He's a great recruiter. They're always a heck of a team. And then I did my homework on budgets and facilities and Utah. Here's what's interesting, and you know this, but Utah is not a transitory state. Utes are Utes, and a little bit like Ohio. You know, if you're Ohioan, you're going to support your team. The Colorado, I noticed, Colorado is a very transitory state, so we had a hard time getting people in the stands. And so I said, I'm going to go look at this. When I saw the Burbage Center, the facilities, and I knew what Colorado State, who was the number one team in the conference at that time, I was like, wait a minute, this isn't even close. And then, Bill, not many people know this. The final, I asked Chris Hill, I said, can I take a car, and I just want to go drive around a little bit. And so that night, I'm staying in the Marriott. No one really knows I'm there. I drive up Foothill Boulevard there and Parkway, and I look and I pull over and I'm praying to myself, like, do I do this? Do I not? And I look, I see all those lights. You know, it's almost like this is the place moment. And I look down there and I'm like, I'm a bad coach if I can't get 50,000 of these people in that stadium. And right then I called Shelly and I said, I'm going to do this. And she said, let's go.
Well, it was a great decision for you, and it was a great decision for the University of Utah. What do you remember most when you first took over the job about those early days? Because, as you mentioned, Mac had the cupboards. You had a lot of talent to work with, but you had to put the Urban Meyer impression on those guys. I've talked to a lot of your former players, but what do you remember most about those early days?
Well, you know, that's always been my approach, is the special ops approach, the Navy SEAL approach, Army Rangers, and make it so miserable that people decide it's not worth it. You know, I kind of grew up in a pretty tough, you know, my dad was a military guy. And so I just always embraced the heart. And so I did it at Bowling Green. I did it everywhere I went, is we put chains on the door and we push them to the point where they say they don't want to do it anymore. And the good thing is, at Utah, we had a couple say they don't want to do it anymore. But I'll tell you what, that Josh Savage and Dave Revel, Mike, Ray Holcraft, some of those guys, my gosh. And then Dawson, then you saw the Alex coming up to, you know, Paris Warren Alex and those guys just starting to service, John Madsen and some of those great players. So I found out early on I couldn't break them. And then I found out there were some of these guys are really, really talented. And then you put great talent with great work ethic and low expectation. We were picked finished I think in the last of the conference. And we won like a bunch, you know, we only lost 2 games in 2 years.
You were Arizona State before Arizona State. Kenny Dillingham went through that last year down at ASU.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I always tell people there's 2 types of work environments, or 3. One's the worst, and that's high expectations and low work ethic. And then there's the medium, which is high expectations, high work ethic. But then when you got high work ethic and the world doesn't even know who you are, you can sneak up and punch a bunch of people right in the jaw, and we did that.
You went out of your way, Urban, to connect with the fans and the students when you first took over the job. Where did that idea come from? Because I remember you dropping pizzas off at frat houses and going out to fan groups. Where'd that come from?
You know, when Earl Bruce, my mentor, he was the guy that replaced Woody Hayes, and I went with him to Colorado State. And once a week, he made all of us assistant coaches, and he did it himself. You know, just go out to fraternities, sororities, student groups, Rotary clubs, and just spread the gospel of your program. And I took 3 months, Bill, and I said, I'm going to go. John Clark was my assistant. We had the Utah, you know, no one knew the fight song.
Yeah.
No one knew it. And I, you know, I started going to every fraternity, every sorority. And then one of our marketing guys, I can't remember his name, had an idea. Why don't we put you on the tracks at 4:30 in the morning once a week in the spring? You know, I brought Swoop with me. I think I brought a cheerleader with me, and I brought a player. And we would ride the tracks down to the stadium and sing the Utah Man song. And then obviously start winning some games. And next thing you know, I remember looking up at the Cal game, and they were standing room only. And then I thought, you know, now we have to sustain this thing because we got them here.
Well, they're still singing it. Last weekend at Wyoming, they even on road games, whenever even if there's 10 Utah fans that come to the game, the team comes over where the fans are and they sing that thing. And you started that. You brought that thing to it.
It's a great fight song. No one knew it. I mean,
yeah.
I remember asking like everyone, say, "What's the fight song here?" And they're like, "We don't know." And then it's a big deal. It is great. It's a great spot.
To the winning,
the must became our template, the sounding board of the university.
Well, that's what I wanted to get to. Now, we're going to talk football in a second, but the other thing I think that you get a lot of credit, not all of it, but you get a lot of credit for is the must. I think when you took over, they were just starting to create that student board. There were a few hundred members. Urban, there's over 8,000 members of the Muss now. Everybody knows who the Muss is. You watch every college game day show, yours, the others, all of them. Everybody knows the Muss. There wasn't a Muss until you took over.
Yeah, I remember they said it's commuter school, and so I would make our players go meet me up for dinner all spring at the Student Union up there. And it was right after the Olympics, so everything was in great shape and beautiful. And once again, out of the blue, I'd make them start singing a fight song, and the players started embracing it because I explained it. I mean, who doesn't want to play in front of a full stadium? And then Ian White, remember Ian White?
I do.
He was the president of the Muss. And then I can't remember exactly how we named it. If I remember right, it used to be called like the student group or something. And then we started taking bids or taking like suggestions. And I remember seeing Muss because it's in the fight song, and the Muss was born.
Amazing. 8,000 strong. They'll be there Saturday, too, for Texas Tech. Talking to Urban Meyer for a couple more minutes. You still keep in touch with the guys from the 04 team?
I do. I obviously Morgan. I texted with Bo Nagy today, and I'm going to get to see him. John Madsen is a guy I keep in touch with. We had, I don't know, it was last year, maybe 2 years ago, 2014, 24.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess it was last spring. Kyle had me come out. We had a little bit of a reunion. 20. Think about this. It's been 20 years, Bill.
I know.
Yeah. So we got to see a bunch of the boys.
It's great. That season still resonates with everybody. A lot of you were only here 2 years, but so many fond memories from that time. Is there one that stands above others for you? And it might not even be a game. It could be a practice or something that happened. But what's a fond memory for you?
Oh, I mean, it's nonstop. And I talked to Chris Hill the other day, and when Spence Eccles was going to build that indoor facility for us, and he said the only rule is if I give this money, it better be done by the team down south game. And the greatest memory that I will ever have of Utah is my last home game there when Alex Smith and Steve Savoy, we ran that little option play. Bo Nagy, he ran a fake punt for a first down, and we just beat the brakes off the rival. Shelly came out of the crowd with my girls, and I said, "Stay right here. I'm going to go shake the coach's hand. It's going to be nuts here, so just stay right here." I go 5 steps, and there's 20,000 people on the field, and they're throwing tortillas and those Mexican hats and sombreros. So a great memory. I still have.
It was great. I was up in the booth, and I remember watching, and the field looked like it filled with ants, like an anthill exploded, and the field was 1 minute it was green with 2 teams on it, then it was just full of everybody, and I was like, I don't know how they're going to find anybody down there. I'll tell you what, though, the other memory that sticks with me was the 03 game against BYU down there, where you guys shut them out for the first time in like 25 years. And I remember I was in there, I kind of snuck in the locker room, and I remember you gave Kyle the game ball that day because his father had passed away a couple of weeks before. And Urban, I say this, and I've told Kyle this, that is one of the most emotional locker rooms I can ever remember that day. The weather was crazy that day too. Remember that?
Yeah, 3-0 in a blizzard. I think Borison was our kicker. We hit a field goal. Not many people know this. Kyle will tell the story too, though, that I was so pissed we didn't score, and I wanted to rub it in so bad, just because of the hatred for that. I don't hate him now, but we are on the 5 or 6 yard line, and I said, I'm going to run it. I'm going, and then Kyle comes sprinting down to me and said, "Coach, it's over. Kneel on the ball." And I said, "Kyle, I won't use the language I used." And him and Dan Mullen almost had to choke me and say, Don't run the ball. Just kneel on it." So,
by the way, I thought you were going to kill Alex Smith that day because the weather was so bad. You ran quarterback keeper about 29 times into that BYU defense.
Yeah, there was a foot of snow.
Yeah.
And he was the guy I trust more than anyone. And that was a great moment.
Hey, 2 more things, then I'll let you go. Urban's been kind enough for his time today. Congratulations on the induction into the College Football Hall of Fame this year. It's fantastic. Utah was part of that. Bowling Green was part of that. Everywhere along the way. What does it mean to you to go into that Hall of Fame with all the other great names that came before you?
Well, I'm not new to the sport. I knew I was one of those people that at a very young age I knew I wanted to play as long as I could and then coach. I studied Tom Osborne and Joe Paterno, Bobby Bowden, Bo Schembechler, Woody Hay. I just was enamored with coaching for some reason, and I was blessed to have great coaches growing up. So, to be in such a select category of it humbles you, but it also makes you think, my gosh, very fortunate. And then I start, when I put the invite list together, I'm like looking at these players and coaches that I got to come to our schools, and some of the greatest players of all time, some of the greatest coaches of all time. So my greatest skill is getting great people around me.
Well, before I let you go, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about the game coming up on Saturday. You guys are coming to town to promote it, to talk about it. It's a great Big 12 opener, probably the best game on the landscape this weekend. Both Utah and Texas Tech are 3-0, but in college football, sometimes it's hard to know what you've got in the non-conference season until you start playing those conference games. So give me a read on what you see Saturday.
Well, I just got done watching the Wyoming game, and Utah defense is elite. This will be their biggest challenge. You think it would be UCLA, but UCLA is really struggling. Wyoming's offense, quite honestly, just wasn't very good. But that's no short change in what the Utes have under Morgan Scalley on defense. My biggest thing is the quarterback, Devin Dampierre, and Kyle and I talked all summer long. Oh no, really, after last year about he's going to make some changes on offense. He had to, and he fell in love with this quarterback in New Mexico, and then the coordinator, who by the way was on that 2004 team in Provo. Beck's the other guy, John and his brother. No, they weren't even related.
No, they were both named Beck, two Becks at quarterback.
Yeah. But he's like a Kyler Murray. I really studied him. I'm going to do some analysis on him on Saturday for the show, but he's not hitting it yet. He's not. He's still I think he's still figuring out his checkers pieces a little bit. And once he does, he's dynamic. He's got a great arm. He's small, so he's got to find the right windows. But that guy's electric. You can tell it's not quite clicking yet. And if it does, that's going to be a hard team to beat.
It's interesting because Beck's offense, I'm not going to say it's what you guys ran, but you guys had so many options in your offense, so many multiple weapons that you could go to, whether it was Warren or Savoy or Madsen, Marty Johnson. You utilized Ben Moa, for goodness sakes. You utilized everybody, and Jason Beck kind of does that. I don't know that Utah has one definitive weapon right now, Urban, but they get the ball around to a lot of people, and that can make it hard to defend when you've got a lot of guys that can make plays for you.
Yeah, I was watching. They're running a lot of plays that were Utah original plays. We were kind of on the cutting edge of the whole spread offense. And Alex Smith, I talked to Alex the other day. I think I did his podcast, and I said, people don't realize, Alex, you're the god. What? You're the godfather of the spread offense. And his two Shane Battier and the other guy in his podcast were like, what? I said, he is the godfather of the spread offense, and I don't think he gets enough credit for that.
True. Hey, I appreciate you doing this. We'll look forward to seeing you up here in Salt Lake this weekend. It'll be great to have you back, Urban. Travel safely, and tell the boys we're looking forward to seeing them.
So good to see you, man. I can't wait to shake your hand, say hello.
Take care. That's Urban Meyer with us here on the Crimson Quarter. Quick timeout. Back with more on the other side on the Crimson Quarter podcast. A huge thank you to Urban Meyer for joining us here on Crimson Corner. Looking forward to seeing Urban. He's in a great spot right now, and I just tell you, he loves Utah. He and his family love Utah. They still come back here quite a bit in the off seasons, but he absolutely positively loves this program, Kyle Whittingham, and all it's about. And so I know he's excited. You could hear it in his voice in that interview, how excited he is to come back. So as we mentioned, the Big Noon Kickoff set up on the corner of Guardsman and Fifth South, just outside the Smith's tent. The show itself runs from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Rob Stone, Urban Meyer, Matt Leinart, Mark Ingram, Brady Quinn, Dave Portnoy, Barstool's very own, is now part of it too. And he'll do something around 7 a.m. So if you're planning on coming out, you could get, it's free, it's open to the public. It's that area right there outside the Smith's tent there on the corner. I'd say probably get out there. If you want to have a good spot, you probably need to get out there 5:30, maybe 6, because everything really fires up around 7 and goes till about 10 o'clock right before kickoff. So that's where that will be. By the way, it's also the Ute Proud game. We do this every year, honoring the Ute tribe. It'll be the Ute Proud game. Lots of festivities at halftime around the Ute tribe. So get out there as well for that on game day. Volleyball this weekend. Football's not the only thing going on around campus. Beth Lanier's team is heading to Cal Poly this weekend. Big weekend set with Cal Poly, Cal Baptist, and St. Mary's. And Utah Soccer opens up Big 12 play this week. They go to TCU to play the nationally ranked Horned Frogs. That game will be on ESPN Plus on Friday night. So let me just give you, before we wrap things up here on Crimson Corner, my public service announcement and request for the week. Get out to watch and support the Big Noon Kickoff Show and kind of make it a great show for the national audience, show that off. But here's the other thing I would say. Get to Rice-Eccles Stadium on Saturday. I know it's early, but here's the deal. When your program is a national program, they put you in good TV windows. This is a good TV window. This, in fact, is probably the best TV window you can be in. The numbers that the Big Noon Kickoff draws every week are astronomical and off the charts. This is good a showcase for Utah athletics, the University of Utah, and Utah football as you could get from a national standpoint. I know it's a little earlier than some people like, but guess what? That's the price of having a great program and being in the spotlight. So get out to Rice-Eccles Stadium on Saturday, 10 a.m., game time, the Big Noon Kickoff, an amazing matchup with Texas Tech as well. And here's the thing. The weather's supposed to be spectacular on Saturday as well. Temperatures in the low to mid-70s at kickoff time. So get out there and show the nation and the rest of the Big 12, because they really didn't get a sneak peek of it last year because of the way the season went. We didn't really have one of these matchups last year at Rice-Eccles Stadium. This year we do. Two outstanding programs that I think are right in that same range. One of these two teams after this game, I think, is taking off and is going to be the front runner to win the Big 12. Hey, it could be a rematch coming up in December in the Big 12 championship game. There's a good chance these two teams could see each other again later in the season. But I do feel like the team that wins this game has a really big advantage early on in Big 12 play on being kind of the front runner, getting that out there. So make it a great, amazing crowd. Get out there, make Rice-Eccles Stadium rock in the sunshine coming up on Saturday. And, again, support all of it all the way through. All the information you need to know about game day festivities is on all the social channels, Utah Athletics, Utah Football on social media. You can go to utahutes.com for all of that good stuff, too. And just have fun. This is exactly what you want if you're a college football fan. You want your team being highlighted by one of the pregame shows like Big Noon Kickoff, and you want them in the best television slot possible, and you want a great day for football at home, and that's exactly what we're going to get coming up on Saturday. I couldn't be any more excited. I love to call every single Utah game, no matter what time it kicks off and no matter how the season is going. But a game like this, these are special games. We had a lot of these games in the Pac-12 era. We're now getting some of these games in the Big 12 era as well. So suit up, boot up, have fun with it on Saturday. We'll see you at Rice-Eccles. We'll see you at the Tailgate Show. All of it coming up on Saturday. I want to thank Nick Bowlerjack for producing this thing each and every week. I want to thank our friends at Advanced Window Products for sponsoring this podcast each and every week. You guys know Nate Orchard, the mayor of Sac Lake City. That's his company. Advanced Window Products. I've worked with them through the years. They've taken good care of me. They'll take good care of you as well. If you need window treatments, if you need new windows, you're tired of paying way too much with your heating bill or your cooling bill in the summer, put some new high-end, high-energy windows in your home and get them from a Utah company that supports the University of Utah and is run by one of the Utah greats, Nate Orchard. That's Advanced Window Products. So for Nick and for Nate at Advanced Window Products, and a big thank you as well to Urban Meyer for being our guest today on the Crimson Corner. I'm Bill Riley saying see you Saturday at Rice-Eccles. Should be a lot of fun, and go Utes.
You've been listening to the Crimson Corner podcast with Bill Riley. Bill is back next week with the latest on Utes. Download previous Crimson Corner episodes on all major podcast platforms.